Hello. When we look at the literature of political thought, it is inevitable to not notice that the idea of justice has always been a hot topic, a hot debate among the philosophers since the time of the ancient Greece. In other words, the questions of who gets what has always been an interest of scholars. This chapter, the last chapter of our book, The Political Thought, mainly focuses on this question and how different philosophers respond to this question of who gets what and why. This chapter firstly starts with discussions on the origins of the contemporary theories of social justice. Then it turns its attention to the one of the main approach in the political thought, which is the utilitarian approach to the idea of justice. Following this, it focuses on the libertarian idea of justice. And afterwards, it focuses on the John Rawls and his propositions as justice, as fairness. Then it provides a brief information on the capability approach to social justice, and lastly, the chapter ends with discussions on the contemporary perspectives of social justice. Let's start with the origins of the contemporary theories of social justice. The idea of justice can be traced back to the ancient world. It was mostly discussed as the virtue of a man in ancient Greek philosophy, particularly in works of Plato. Plato's understanding of justice was associated with the concepts of desert. However, he implicitly expressed the concepts of desert, saying that everyone should be entitled to have what they have deserve. Looking at Aristotle's approach to justice, we see that he distinguished what we call criminal justice from what we call today as social justice. Aristotle's contribution to the idea of justice can also be addressed through the concepts of equality, which was first used by him to emphasize equality of people who were in the same strata in ancient Greek society. During the Middle Ages, we hadn't have a particular understanding of justice. However, some great figures of the New Age, such as Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, allocated significant place to the idea of justice in their works. According to Hobbes, for example, justice is to obey the rules of covenant. Instead of directly define what justice is, what justice should be, Hobbes discussed about injustice and claimed that injustice is no other than the not performance of covenant. Absence of moral dimension in Thomas Hobbes' idea of justice was noticed by Scottish philosopher David Hume, who claimed that a promise, for example, obeying the rules of contract, would be intelligible, and even if the intelligible, it would not be attended to any moral obligation. So Hume takes the attention to the moral dimensions of a covenant, from which it can be inferred that Hume took an attention to the idea of fairness. In fact, Hume's discussions on the idea of justice has led the emergence of the utilitarian perspective of social justice. Utilitarian perspective to social justice is one of the most dominant perspective in the literature of social justice, and apparently in the literature of political thought. Briefly looking at the classical and contemporary utilitarian perspectives of social justice, we can point out three characteristics to define it. The first is its consequentialist or Machiavellian nature. According to this view, every choice must be judged, must be evaluated with respect to consequences that they generate. The second component is its economic welfarism that restricts every potential attempt assessing justice to utility or subjective well-being of people, that is, happiness, but with no direct attention to the violations of civic, political, and social rights of individuals. The third one is it is sum ranking calculus, which requires that the utilities of different people are simply summed together to reach their aggregate merit, but with no attention to actual distributions of that utility among individuals. One important aspect that we should underline, the utilitarian approach takes happiness as a subjective well-being as the focal point of assessment of policies when it discusses on justice in the literature. When we look at the libertarian approach to social justice, we see that it has certain differences from the utilitarian approach. Different from the utilitarian model of social justice, the libertarian approach advocates giving priority to the aggregative interests of society. The libertarian model of social justice highlights the importance of certain inalienable rights of individuals, such as earning and holding their private property. In case of conflicting interest of individuals with the overall interest of society, the utilitarian model chooses to take side next to the overall interest of the society or public. However, in the libertarian literature, libertarian scholars consider that there is no possibility to increase the sum total expediency of the public while the rights of individuals are ignored. Main proponents of the libertarian model in our age are considered as Friedrich von Hayek and Robert Nozick. Contemporary libertarian approach to social justice primarily focuses on the protections of liberal rights of individuals. In this view, the liberal rights that should be protected are in a sense identified as right for the private property and ownership or holdings or possession. The libertarian view puts forward its own conceptualizations on justice around the individual responsibility and entitlements toward acquiring, transferring, and holding private property. Therefore, we can say that these rights illustrate an approach of social justice in terms of individuals' merit and desert. The libertarian model rejects the intervention to the spontaneous order of market that is assumed to work so as to distribute all desired and undesired goods perfectly just on its own. The main characteristic of the just society in this model is considered as one in which everyone is equally entitled to the rights of acquisition, transfer, and holding private properties. When we look at the contemporary literature of social justice, we see that the Rawlsian approach to social justice is quite strong. We can actually say that the Rawlsian model of social justice is one of the most influential theories of social justice in our age. Rawls draws on some hypothetical devices of impartiality that he terms as original position or veil of ignorance. The term implies a process of decision-making that should govern the distributions of value in the society. According to Rawls, if groups in a society come together to discuss whilst they are in their original position, this discussion inevitably results in two principles of distribution. First, each person has an equal right to a fully adequate scheme of equal basic rights and liberties, which scheme is compatible with a similar scheme for all. And second, social and economic inequalities are to satisfy two conditions. First, they must be attached to offices and positions open to all under the conditions of fair equality of opportunity. And second, they must also be to the greatest benefit of the least advantageous members of society. It's crucial to point out how the principles of justice that Rawls specify operate and distribute the social primary goods. In Rawls' well-ordered society, the first two categories of the primary goods are equally guaranteed to everyone due to the first principle having priority over the second principle. Following this, everyone is given an equal chance to access the third category of primary goods based on the first part of the second principle. It's only after these conditions are satisfied that the second part of the second principle, namely the difference principle, that aims to compensate disadvantages of those who are worse off by redistributing the fourth category of primary goods, namely income and wealth, can come into play. Although Rawls' theory of justice is quite influential in today, there are also some approaches that criticize it quite convincingly. Among those approaches, the capability perspective is a convincing perspective developed by primarily Amartya Sen and advanced by the Martha Nussbaum. The capability approach suggests that individuals' capability, in other words, individuals' freedom, should be the basis of assessment regarding social justice. Focal point of justice, according to the capability approach, is based on that whether a person has a capability to do things or B, that she has reason to value. One of the distinctive features of justice is social justice is associated with considering it in relation with fairness, but not absolute equality. Idea of fairness is valued in the capability approach in terms of 2 points. Firstly, fairness primarily focuses on outcome, but not on initial positions of individuals. The second point, which is in relation to the first one, is that it gives priority to the basic idea that justice requires an unequal treatment to people who are not equal. Freedom in the capability approach is important both intrinsically and instrumentally. Amartya Sen's capability approach proposes to focus on individuals' freedom or capability to achieve what they have reason to value in their life. In fact, this normative proposition is not only advocated for the assessment of social justice in a society, but also for the assessments of economic development, well-being of individuals, welfare programs of countries, or particular social policies and programs for disadvantaged groups. Complementary contributions to the idea of social justice are certain perspectives which do not provide comprehensive theories of social justice, but proposes some complementary principles for ensuring justice, social justice in society. Looking at the literature of social justice, we can see these perspectives are also quite influential in contemporary research on poverty, inequality, and development. Among these approaches, we can point out Ronald Dworkin's Equality of Resources, Axel Honneth and Nancy Fraser, Recognition and Redistribution, and Peter Townsend, Contributions of Unjust Distributions of Resources and Participation to the Life of Society. Dworkin's idea of equality of resources rejects the idea of equality of welfare, since it doesn't attain any responsibility to people in terms of their expensive tastes, and thus compensates inequalities resulting from different preferences. Axel Honneth and Nancy Fraser consider that the idea of justice focusing on only economic welfare is reductionist, since there has been an increasing demand for recognition of different identities in society. Looking at British sociologist Peter Townsend's approach to social justice, we see the term of relative poverty. According to Townsend, poverty should be considered in terms of relative needs of people rather than objectivist terms. He proposes that we should arrange a system that aims to distribute the value in society in line with authentic characteristics of society. This last chapter of our book, Political Thought, mainly focuses on the idea of social justice, which is one of the most hot debate in the literature of political philosophy. This chapter, this last chapter of your book, Political Thought, is firstly focuses on the idea of justice in ancient Greek and Roman law, since they are origins of the contemporary ideas of political social justice in political thought. Moving from medieval age to the period of Enlightenment, it pay attention the ideas of certain philosophers like Thomas Hobbes, David Hume, as an important roots in the development of one of the main comprehensive view in the social justice literature, the utilitarian approach. Following this, it focuses on the utilitarian approach, and it gives quite detailed information about how the utilitarian approach advocates to assess social justice in the society. Then it turns its attention to the libertarian idea of social justice, and it summarizes how the libertarian perspective, namely Frederick von Hayek and Robert Nozick, evaluates justice within the society through paying attention to the individual's entitlements, which are basically considered as possession, holding, acquiring properties. Then it turns the chapter turns its attention to the Rawlsian approach, which can be called the most dominant perspective in the developed countries in terms of assessing social justice. Then it focuses on the capability approach, which focuses on freedom, individuals' freedom to achieve what they have reason to value in their life, and it summarizes how the capability approach proposes to assess social justice and related issues such as economic development and social choice theory or well-being of individuals in society. Lastly, your chapter focuses on some complementary perspectives to the social justice, which are not comprehensive theories of justice like utilitarian, libertarian, or Rawlsian models of justice, but some complementary propositions to contribute to the idea of social justice, which basically are Ronald Dworkin's equality of resources, Axel Honneth from Frankfurt School, and Nancy Fraser's idea of recognition and redistribution, and British sociologist Peter Townsend's idea of relative poverty. Thank you to join me today.